Today we're looking at The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt. I don't know how to say that, I'm sorry. Loving your work, Jonathan, but I can't say your name. A bit of a spoiler alert there, I guess. This is actually from 2024, so it's something new that I've actually picked up on, which is interesting. I having saw an interview with him on YouTube, very interesting. One of my, not quite things I want to gripe about in terms of life not being fair, because life isn't fair. But one of the things from parenting perspective, it's interesting that there's no generation that's come before that's had to deal with my generation of parenting's issues with kids and smartphones and social media and all that kind of delightful stuff. And it's difficult to know what to do with it. So I guess that's where I was looking in terms of that and got this book, which has been brilliant and actually really useful. And probably a must read for anyone who has youngish kids, or kids actually, anyone under, probably any child under 16 probably need this book. Jonathan Haidt, Jonathan, he's a social psychologist anyway. Apparently he wasn't intending to write this book in particular. It just ended up as this when he was delving into the statistics, because there are some horrible statistics regarding people born after 1995. So bear in mind some of those are pushing 30. So people born after 95, even some adults are having some problems that it seems correlate with the advent of smartphones and social media. The book is generally aimed at kids, but I think actually there's probably some value in here for grown-ups as well, just because I think probably most people can relate to some problem of excessive scrolling on phones and that sort of thing. Not everyone, I appreciate, but to some extent you get the doom scrollers and people on Twitter. I mean, it's only, I'm sure it's a thing only recently that people actually could think of news as a hobby. Like, there's something wrong with that, isn't there? That's something a bit suspicious, that news could be a hobby. There's an interesting point he pulled out, that actually the world seems to have got more dangerous, but actually it's got safer if you do look at the stats. Perhaps seems more dangerous because you don't get clickbait things for happy news, do you? It's always for these terrible things, and it's spread infectiously now. And tied in with that idea that there are a lot of people who have news as a hobby, people just seem to get off almost on this really terrible news. And at the same time, it's driving kids and other people out of the real world, which is getting safer, and into the online world, which, whilst might not be that unsafe in terms of scammers, and it probably not as bad as it seems in terms of predators in there or whatever, but it's still an opportunity cost in terms of they could be doing something a bit more healthy than sitting there scrolling on a phone. The stats anyway talk about the decline in time children spend playing with actual friends in real life and not playing with phones. That's been on a decrease since the 90s. I think to some extent also perhaps true with grown-ups. There's been an explosion of anxiety in younger kids. I mean, if the tables and things are all in the book, worth having a read, but it's just dramatic the way they've just sort of spiked up since the 90s. There's been a huge decline in self-reported levels of mental health pretty much across the board. There's apparently even an impact on sleep, which you get that sort of triad of sleep, exercise and diet. You get those right for health. I'd always thought of those in terms of being equally of importance. But actually you think about it, sleep is actually the foundation on which the other two sit. I mean, you could eat perfectly and exercise loads, but if you're not sleeping, that's all gone. And it seems demonstrably true that a lot of people are losing a lot of sleep to their phones. As I said before, there's the problem that it's not only harmful in itself potentially to some varying degrees, but it's also displacing the time that people could have been spending doing healthier things. And then there's the endless notifications, which are a sort of distraction to proper social engagement. And even people who put their phones on silent, it sort of sits there and you need to check it, don't you? It's definitely a thing. And I say very early on in the book, it makes the point that this is a really big problem for kids in particular, but also for grown-ups, that does need to be addressed. It does all seem kind of obvious, I guess. I mean, if you actually sat down and think, is it really good for you? Do you know how much time you spend scrolling in front of your phone? And if you did, probably be horrified, but it would probably be obvious that probably wasn't a good thing, and maybe there's something better you could be doing with your time. I say you, I don't mean you, I mean you as in the royal you, all of us. Anyway, but I love that the book actually, for child raising purposes, it actually gives you some structured advice in terms of what to do. His feeling being that no smartphones until year 9, which is roughly age 13. My daughter is 10, and a lot of her friends already have smartphones. She does have a phone, but it's a dumb phone, so she has no apps or anything. We just use it when she's off out and about, so I can try and let her be a little bit more free range. But there was pressure on to start thinking about smartphones, and the book has now cured that. I'm very definitely not getting anywhere near a smartphone until 13. And social media actually talks about until 16. So it's and there's obviously a flip side problem to that, in the sense that kids are going to be left out because all the other kids are going to have it. I mean, already for my daughter, a lot of her friends have smartphones. But yeah, I guess it's that problem. You've got two evils to choose from. You can choose the evil where your child is being subjected to all these problems, or you can have them as a little bit of an outcast. And I have to say, I would rather choose the bit of an outcast thing. It's not ideal, but I guess that's part of my gripe, that this is the world that we're now in and we have to deal with. I can't do a very good job of explaining exactly what the problems are. Everyone should read the book. I think this is one of those. It's one of those things that everyone should definitely read. But to illustrate a sort of a small part of the idea is all this stuff with particularly short videos. I gather Instagram. I don't have an Instagram, but I gather Instagram has them, and Facebook's now getting them, and there's TikToks and all this stuff. And at what point did something become worth bothering your time with when it was only 60 seconds long? It's really weird, and platforms seem to have got really good at working these ways to hook attention, and there's a lot of money going into expertise to work out how to do it and keep people on there longer and then advertise to them and all sorts. And it's basically around that sort of thing, and the addictiveness, I suppose. So yeah, that's not a very good explanation of the nature of the problem, but yeah, get the book and have a read of that, definitely. There's an interesting point about which Jonathan makes the point of people saying, oh, it's too late, my kid's already got a smartphone or social media. And yeah, that sort of seems like, oh yeah, okay, well, never mind, it was worth a go. But actually, if you drink too much and you smoke or something, just because you already do those things, it doesn't mean it's a good idea to not try and stop doing them, does it? So I think actually, again, it's that lesser of evils. Your kid's going to hate you because you're going to take this away. But if you don't take it away, then all these problems of huge anxiety and all the rest of it. It's an average thing, and obviously not every person is average. But I mean, you can see it around you. It's I go out for dinner sometimes, and you just see couples at the table playing with their phones as well, and it's just like, that wouldn't have been like that 20 years ago, because phones were boring 20 years ago. So yeah, I think people would be hard pressed to deny that there is actually a problem if you stop and think about it. In terms of what to do about it, obviously there's no way it's going to get banned, and you couldn't ban it anyway, because it's like a China approach to it. It has all kinds of problems that are perhaps worse anyway. But I think just an awareness of it, I guess, hopefully is useful. I mean, that's basically why I got the book. It was just trying to understand a bit more about it. But yeah, it's definitely something that we all have to learn to manage ourselves. And yeah, we'll see how we go with that. Great book anyway. It's one of those problems, it's not obvious that it really exists, but you read that and then it's like, oh yeah, this really does exist, and it does need something doing about it, doesn't it? And I imagine it will be something on here I say quite rarely, that books should be ones that everybody should read, but that is very definitely going to be one of them.